Let's talk some of my favourite reads from 2024 as we are already at the end of the year, and guys, I cannot believe it. Hi, Katie here, better known as Reading with Katie Louise, and I'm here to bring you some of my best books from each month of 2024. So, with 2024 coming to an end very soon, I thought it was about time I brought you some of my favourite books from the year, and we might as well start strong at January. And my first book is The Curfew by T.M. Logan. This was a 5-star rating for me and was a lovely way to start January. So if you're unaware of this book, this follows a bunch of kids where one of them goes missing, and one of the boys in the group comes home and asks his dad for an alibi to say, because he didn't meet his curfew, and yeah. So obviously then the whole thing is investigated. Is she alive? Is she not? And it follows mainly the point of view of the dad. I was hooked on this. I was actually up, I think, at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, because I'd been dreaming about this book and loved it so much that I just had to, I had to just pick it up and finish it. So I finished this. It was a 5-star and a really good way to start the year. I think this was somewhere towards the end of January that I read this book. It has been a while, but I would definitely recommend this, and it was definitely my favourite for January. Now, at the back end of 2023, I actually discovered audiobooks, so I wanted to integrate these more into my reading. So in February, my favourite book was actually The Castaways by Lucy Clarke. This was actually my first book by Lucy Clarke as well, and it did not disappoint. This was another 5-star rating. So this follows a plane crash which leaves them on a stranded island, and there is something carved in the stone, and honestly, you do not see the twist in this coming. It is quite a heartwarming story. There are quite a few people on the plane. Quite a few, obviously, unfortunately, do not survive the crash. And I do remember, I believe she looks after a baby that is not hers. And it just brings up all sorts of things. Honestly, I read this 10 months ago, guys, but I just remember being so hooked on this audiobook that I did not want to stop listening to it. And I think audiobooks, that's a lot harder to do. So it was definitely a recommend for me, and honestly, such a good part of February and a brilliant way for me to become hooked on audiobooks for the rest of the year. On to March now, and this is probably going to come as no surprise to people who know me, and that is Eeny Meeny by MJ Arledge. Honestly, this was me falling into MJ Arledge. I saw them at the Works for £3 each, and that just started my obsession with MJ Arledge. I now own, up until time of recording this, all of his books that have been released. I have them all in paperback, and I only have 3 left to read, and oh my goodness. So this particular book is the first in the series of the D.I. Helen Grace series, and this follows someone who basically kidnaps 2 people at a time, and only one of them will ever make it out alive. So it starts out with a couple, and basically they're left in an abandoned swimming pool where they can't get out. There's no way for them to get out. The only way one of them survives is the other one. Basically, one of them has to unalive the other. This is so twisted, you will not believe. I inhaled this book. Somewhere over on my TikTok account, you will see that I vlogged this, and oh my goodness, what an absolute whirlwind of a book. I gave this 5 stars again. It started my obsession with MJ Arledge, but it was such an easy read. I can't even begin to explain this book to you. The twists, the turns, they're super short chapters, guys. They're 3 to 4 pages a chapter, so it's really quick and easy to follow. And yeah, it just made me fall in love with D.I. Helen Grace, to be honest, and an absolute, I will continue to hype about this series until I'm blue in the face. So moving on to April, and it was no different really. As I said, in March I read a lot of the D.I. Helen Grace series, so that brings me on to Little Boy Blue. This is book 5 in the series, I believe, and this was quite short and snappy. This was another 5-star read. So this follows a series of unalivings after they basically all connect back to D.I. Helen Grace, as it is people she knows. But it's from a hidden part of her life that she doesn't want the police force to know about. It's not necessarily dodgy, but it's just something that she needs to do to cope with all the trauma in her life. The ending to this, it's a cliffhanger, guys, there's the disclaimer, but oh my goodness. Again, it was quick, it was easy, it was short anyway because it's one of the shorter books in her series, but wow, I have only given 2 books 5 stars in the series, and you've seen both of them already. That being said, the rest are all 4 stars and at that high 4-star, but these just, honestly, I could not stop recommending these books enough. If you haven't already, head over to my BookTok because the full MJ Arledge collection is there, up to the 11th book in the series. And also, I will be bringing a ranking video once I've completed his collection, which is one of my goals for 2025. Moving on to May now, and I'm going to talk to you about The Echo Man by Sam Holland. I started to tackle my TBR challenge this year, and I absolutely loved this challenge because it made me look into books I never thought I would look into. So The Echo Man follows basically someone going around unaliving people. So it's a serial killer, I'm going to say it. And it follows this person as they're like sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Duplicating other serial killers in the past. Not just one, several different ones. And it is down to the Major Crimes Unit to try and solve it. This is actually book 1 in the series. Book 1 and 2 do not correlate in my opinion, but book 3 rounds them off. And they both come together, the two teams that you see in the first 2 books. This is actually available on Kindle Unlimited. But oh my goodness, I really, really enjoyed this. This was twisty. Again, I read it on my Kindle, but I still really enjoyed it. I was so immersed in the story. And it was another 5-star read, as I'm sure it comes as no surprise. But yeah, definitely recommend you add this one. TTBR for 2025 if you haven't read it already, but I really enjoyed the plot of this. On to June now, and honestly, another 5-star read, and actually another audiobook pick, and that was His and Hers by Alice Feeney. This was actually my first taste of Alice Feeney and her work, and it has led me on to actually pick Alice Feeney as my first author spotlight for 2025 on backlog that I want to complete. This book follows 2 people who crimes keep getting committed, people keep getting unalived, and basically it keeps connecting back to them. Those 2 themselves are connected, and yeah, honestly, I was hooked. I was a little confused, but it was still a 5-star because I think that was the point of the book for me. I really like Alice Feeney's writing. I actually ended up reading a couple more of her books throughout the year. Do not reach my faves of the year, but still very, very good books and still 4-star ratings. But again, this one was a 5-star, and honestly, I'd absolutely recommend this book. It was just such an easy listen, and I cannot wait to finish the other 3 of her books in January. On to July now, and I don't think it would be one of my booktube videos if I didn't mention this author, and of course that is my favourite author, and that is Steve Kavanagh. He released Witness 8 in August, however I did receive this as an ARC, so I read this at the end of July, and it did not disappoint. I just love the Eddie Flynn series, and this is book 8. Witness 8 refers to the main character of this book. She witnesses a murder and basically anonymously rings the police and tells them who did it, apart from she lies. Honestly, you will not see this coming. And Mr. Christmas is one of my favourite characters. Until you have read the book, you won't understand that. But honestly, if you haven't picked up this series yet, you really need to. I have done a video on my booktube, so please go and check it out if you are interested in starting the Eddie Flynn series. I've talked about all of his books. And I think once the new Eddie Flynn at number 9 releases in July, I will do a full ranking of the books, and I may even do a reread if I'm feeling fruity. But yeah, so this one was so twisted, and like I found it so enjoyable, and I just couldn't not give it a 5-star. Like my jaw was on the floor at the end of this book. I did and ah about the 5-star originally, but I just, when I'd finished reading it, I couldn't actually fault it to give it anything less. So I was super excited to receive that ARC, and I am praying that 2025 is the year I get a physical ARC for Steve Kavanagh. August was actually a really difficult month for me to decide what my favourite book of the month was, but I did decide on Small Joys by Elvis James Mensah. Honestly, this was a completely like red herring. I read over 20 books, I think 24 in August, and honestly, this was definitely one of the top of the year for me, let alone the month. This was recommended to me by a friend called Nick, and honestly, I would never have read it if it wasn't for his recommendation, and I did choose to pick it up in audio. It follows Harley, who drops out of uni and he's really struggling to sort of find himself. It tackles a lot of really important issues, and it talks about friendships, racism, religious beliefs, sexuality. There's just so many things this book talks about, and there are, I would say, quite a few trigger warnings. I felt quite a lot of emotion in this book. But the friendships that are built within this are absolutely stunning. There are trigger warnings for mental health, guys, so please read the trigger warnings before you go into that book. But I cannot begin to express how much I love that book. It was one of the best I have listened to, and yeah, it really helped me branch out, because I would never have picked that up if it wasn't for recommendations from others. And that is probably a bit of a plea to you, to please expand your reading if you can. I know I say I'm a crime and thriller girly, but I was so glad that this has reached my top of the year. September was a bit of a weird month for me. I actually really kind of slumped, as I usually do. I go out to work after 6 weeks off. I've normally spammed books like they're going out of fashion during the summer. So I definitely feel like I sort of slumped in September. That being said, my favourite read of the month did end up being The Girl in the Fire by Sarah K. Stevens. I actually only rated this 4 stars though. That being said, the premise of this book was really good and I did really, really enjoy it. So it follows 2 points of view, and basically a woman dies in a fire, I think it's 20 years ago, don't hold me to that. And basically it then is discovered that she's still alive, so it's trying to figure out what happened. So it's the timeline leading up to the fire and obviously after, as a lot of things start to happen. She gets discovered as to who she really is. So yeah, there's a lot of discovery in this book, but I really enjoyed the premise. It was something I hadn't read before, which is something obviously that really helps me enjoy a book more. But yeah, it was an ARC I received, so I was really fortunate. It is now released, and I believe it is on Kindle Unlimited, and I have downloaded a few more of her books to pick up in 2025 because I do really like this author's writing. But yeah, it was a bit of a harder month. I didn't read as much, and I think because I was slumping, I didn't enjoy the books as much, but still one of my favourites of the month. On to October now, and my favourite book of the month was Listen for the Lie by Amy Tintera. Again, this was only 4 star. The end of the year very much changed for me. My reading taste changed, my time to read, my stress levels. There were a numerous amount of things that kind of took my love away from reading. However, I picked this up. So this is a mixed media book, and I was going to pick it up in audio. However, I was told some of the voices and narration maybe what might put me off the book. So this follows a woman who comes back into town after it's believed that she unalived her best friend. She doesn't actually remember what happened. She's just woken up to this crime scene. And basically the podcaster is trying to find out what really happened to this person. And yeah, it drags up a lot of her past, but I really enjoyed the premise of this book. I liked the way it was set out. I liked the relationships that were being built, but I also liked that it was not as straightforward as I thought it was going to be. It was just such an enjoyable read. And I would recommend you definitely have this TTBR for 2025. Now, November was a turbulent month. I felt so many emotions. So if you've seen my book talk, you'll know where this is going. But my favourite read of November was Binding 13. This was my favourite book. It was the first book I actually picked up in November and read this within, I think, 3 to 4 days. Now, hear me out. I was off work the 1st, 2nd and 3rd of November, and I pretty much picked it up and read it non-stop. So this is a hefty book. It is 796, sorry. Keeping 13 was 802. And this follows Johnny Kavanagh and Shannon Lynch. There are 11 trigger warnings in this book. You will feel emotions. I saw the hype of this book and I was so scared to pick it up. Then I think I watched a programme that made me cry, and I suddenly felt the urge to read a book that would make me cry. Shannon comes from quite the background. She's moved to a private school through bullying, and basically it's not just the bullying that is going on in her life. Johnny accidentally hits her with a rugby ball, and it starts from there. You would not believe you could get another thick book like this for their story, but oh my, you can. If you want to see the full vlog, please head over to my TikTok. It is over there. But this book I could talk about for ages. This is one of my favourites of the year and definitely hits the top 5. I just have no words. This book was, I am so excited to pick up the rest of the story. I just needed to take a break because it is emotionally hard. Again, 11 trigger warnings, including bullying, and I'm not even going to tell you some of the other ones because you need to check it out for yourself, guys. This was an absolute beast of a read and definitely one of my favourites of the year. We are on to December. Now, this is a tricky month for me. I slumped ridiculous. I still managed to read quite a lot of books. I don't know how I've done that. I think audiobooks have definitely seen me through. However, I actually really struggled to pick a favourite book for December. None of them have particularly stood out. However, just before recording this, I did finish a romance, and I feel like it can make my favourites of the year, but definitely won't make the top 10. And that is Look Up Handsome by Jack Strange. So this is set on Hay-on-Wye at Christmas, and basically it follows an author who comes into town. He is originally from Hay-on-Wye, but circumstances have made him move to London. And they come across each other as the other character runs a bookshop, but his stepfather is planning on kicking him out of the bookshop to turn it into something else. Their story is adorable. I really enjoyed it, and I did rate it 4 stars, but I can't say there's a book that I want to rave about. I still recommend you read it. It's lovely, it's cute, it's a perfect Christmas read. But December was such a peculiar month for me. Like, I don't know, if it wasn't for audiobooks, I'd probably have read 1 or 2 books and wouldn't even been able to give you a favourite of the month, because a lot of the thrillers I've picked up have been very low level. But yeah, that is my review of my favourite December book. But yeah, that is my 12 books wrapped, guys. So that is all of the books that I would say are my favourites of the year per month. I will bring you a wrapped up video of my favourite books of the year, as some months were harder than others to pick one. But please let me know in the comments what some of your favourite books from 2024 are and what you are looking forward to reading in 2025. I'm going to say this now, guys, Happy New Year, and I can't believe what a reading year 2024 has been, and I'm so looking forward to getting stuck into more books in 2025. As always, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.